Welcome to the Iowa True Crime Podcast.
The true crime podcast for Iowans.
I'm Maddie Sagers.
I'm Jillian McRae.
I'm Megan Antone.
I'm Ines Ojegovic.
And we're your true crimers. On Halloween night, or the morning of November 1st in 1975, between the hours of 1 and 3 a.m., parents Leslie and Georgine and their children Julie and Jeff Mark were all shot to death in their home in Cedar Falls, Iowa. The 4 people killed classified this case as a mass murder. Upon arrival at the Mark family farm, the murderer cut the wires in the telephone terminal box across the street. After unlocking the door using the spare key hidden under the doormat, he entered the basement and turned off the power before smoking 2 cigarettes. The murderer then headed to Leslie and Georgine's room, where he shot Leslie 5 times and Georgine 4 times. Then he went to Julie's room, a 5-year-old daughter, and shot her twice. After that, he went to Julie's brother's Jeff's room, a 1-year-old baby, shot him twice, once in the head and once in the heart. Later on, Dorothy Mark, the mother of Leslie, found the bodies of her dead family. She never expected the murderer to be her son, Jerry.
So let's start off with who is Jerry Mark. Jerry Mark was a former member of the Peace Corps. He was also a self-proclaimed hippie lawyer. After the murder, tragedy swept through the community, angering many. The hunt for the murderer had begun. Jerry was one of the leading suspects in the case, and it was also rumored that there was conflict between Jerry and his brother Leslie over custody of the farm. Leslie stayed behind to care for his family's land while Jerry moved off into California. Many believe that Jerry had the motive to kill Leslie in order to gain the custody over the farm.
There are many pieces of evidence used in this case. Some of the main ones include that investigators said the crime scene showed the murderer was somewhat familiar with the farm grounds. There were footprints found near the camper where Leslie would occasionally sleep. The telephone wires leading to a neighboring farm had been cut the night of the murders. Prior to 1974, that set of wires actually led to the Marks farm, but they were rerouted during the summer of 1974. Because Jerry Mark moved from Iowa to California in 1974, he would have been familiar with the telephone wires only as they existed before they were rerouted. The murderer was also able to enter the house without waking anyone, including the family dog. All of this evidence proves that the murderer had to be familiar with the house and the farm before committing the murders.
Another piece of evidence was Jerry lied about where he was to the police. He misled the police, saying he was nowhere near Iowa, and he later claimed he picked up a female hitchhiker and took her to Wyoming. He had an affair with her and claimed he lied to the police to protect his relationship with his girlfriend.
Telephone records from Nebraska also increased the suspicion as Jerry Mark as the murderer. In Alda, Nebraska, between the hours of 3 p.m. and 4 p.m. on Saturday, November 1st, Jerry called his girlfriend and her family's house. His girlfriend's mother answered the phone and could tell it was Jerry. She then asked him, "Jerry, where are you?" To which he replied, "I can't say." Also at the crime scene there were fingerprints, but they were found as unidentified.
To strengthen the case against Jerry Mark, a California gun store employee said that Jerry bought the same bullets that were found at the crime scene before the murder. Originally, he told the police that he never bought ammunition, and it was a very rare type, .38 long Colt. On the same day he bought the ammunition, he shaved his beard and mustache, changing his appearance. He said he purchased the bullets for a book he planned to write.
Okay.
Why would you buy ammunition for, a book?
I'm not sure what kind of book it could have been, but either way, to first lie and say you never bought it, and then to say, you bought it for a book.
Especially
it's just,
don't think it makes any sense.
Yeah. And especially, the specific type that they, a lot of police, I read that a lot of police said that it wasn't available anywhere in Northeast Iowa.
Right, and wouldn't it be multiple boxes, too?
Yeah. So it was, it just doesn't make sense. What kind of book would you need to get this specific type of
exactly.
box for?
Another thing that was found at the crime scene were 4 cigarettes. They were tested to determine the blood type. They were Marlboro cigarettes, the same kind Jerry smoked. The individual that smoked the cigarettes had O blood type. Jerry's blood type was O as well. A shoe print was found at the crime scene. The shoes were never found, but they were the same size fit Jerry Mark wore.
Yeah, and I was even reading the article, and it said that local podiatrists here in Cedar Falls analyzed the gait of the footprints or whatever, and said that it would, like, match someone who's, like, Jerry Mark's stature. And, like, if it was the same foot size, I don't know.
Yeah. There were also many eyewitnesses involved in the investigation. Some of the most crucial points were there was a rest stop worker named Leslie Warren who worked in Chapel, Nebraska, and she claimed that she saw Jerry Marks on the 31st of October, which would give him ample time to get from Chapel, Nebraska to Cedar Falls in time for the murders. Carolyn Kemp and Marion Stinson, 2 employees at the Shamrock Cafe in Atlantic, Iowa, testified in court that they saw Mark in the cafe around 6 p.m. on October 31st. Rosalie McGinnis testified at the trial that she saw Mark at Conoco gas station in Stewart, Iowa, between 7 and 8 a.m. on Saturday, November 1st, the morning after the murders.
So while Jerry was on trial, the first trial, he actually got convicted. So he went to jail, and then he eventually appealed his case on the grounds that he had many objections to the evidence that was used to convict him. According to an article in the Chicago Tribune titled DNA Undercuts Verdict in Infamous Iowa Case, Jerry Mark believes that he got convicted because he got caught in a lie about purchasing the bullets. The article said, as Mark put in late February at the prison, here's why I got convicted. I led to the cops and bought the bullets. He claimed that there was an undisclosed police report that revealed that a partial box of the rare ammunition was obtained by police in Waterloo, Iowa, within a week of the crime.
He also claimed that there were eyewitnesses who were not brought into the case that would have helped his case be solidified. He also accounted that many of the eyewitnesses that were submitted into the case were also false. For example, the eyewitnesses who saw him in Nebraska, Jerry said that he was there November 1st, but but the worker had a doctor's appointment and didn't work the morning of November 1st, so he said he had to have seen Jerry on the 31st. Jerry thinks the state suppressed doctor records showing the worker was there on the 31st and not the 1st, which would prove the eyewitness statement wrong. The crime scene was also a big mess, according to some records, and there were cigarette butts found that were the deputies', not Jerry's. But before the first trial, it was actually found that the cigarette in the upstairs room was smoked by Deputy James Weiser, whose blood type was type A, which fits under the blood type of type O.
To this day, the case is still developing. Some recent updates include recent DNA results undermined the cigarette butt DNA, which the state had used as physical evidence to tie Jerry to the crime. Jerry Mark did have the same blood type as whoever smoked the cigarettes. Mark was also convicted with a bullet lead analysis, but the FBI has now stated that it is flawed and outdated. The genetic material that was used as physical evidence is now in question. Is the evidence actually enough to incriminate him? Jerry Mark is now 70 years old and is still serving his life sentence at the Iowa State Penitentiary in Fort Madison. Do you think he did it?
It's so hard
This
to
is
say.
it's like a hard case because it's like every piece of evidence I would read, there was like some objection to it and like some reason why it was like a little bit sketchy.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's hard to know, like, I don't know, but then you read like the part where he lied to the police about where he was going.
Yeah.
And he says the only reason he lied is because he didn't want to put like his relationship in jeopardy. Like, first of all, how would his girlfriend even find
Yes,
out? Like,
exactly.
are the police gonna tell her?
Like, it's
That
very
doesn't make
sketchy.
sense. And like,
everything around
especially
it.
if you knew that you were like the main suspect in like somebody you loved,
murder
like
case.
murder.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you do like everything in your power to be like, I was
Right.
not there? Like,
Especially because he was a lawyer. Like,
And
he came
yeah,
from a law
no,
background.
yeah,
so
he was
he
a
like
lawyer.
understands how like trials and stuff
like
work.
he would have known that they were gonna look for eyewitnesses. He would have known that there were people that were gonna see him, like in Nebraska and in Iowa. So like, why lie to start out? Like,
I didn't
it doesn't
even catch
make
the
sense.
fact that he like changed his appearance that day.
Yeah, I
that's
saw that.
crazy.
I read that when I was looking at the bullets thing. It was like, because they were, at first he was, like, I read the part where he was objecting to it and how they'd found another box in Northeast Iowa, but it was like when he bought the bullets in California, like the same exact day, he like shaved his mustache and beard, which is just like a little bit suspicious. Like, why?
Yeah, it just
Like, I
doesn't
mean,
make
could it be a
sense.
coincidence? Like, yeah, but
That's a
for
lot of
book.
coincidences.
yeah,
Coincidences
it's a
to, like,
coincidence.
what?
Yeah.
And then the other thing that also, like, we talked about it earlier, but the book thing about the bullets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't understand. If he was writing a book about bullets, why wouldn't he buy more types of bullets?
Yeah.
And why
and
would
not
he
just
also
one
change
kind.
his appearance on the same day?
Yeah.
Like, it just doesn't
It
make
just
sense.
doesn't line up.
Well, to drive your motorcycle all the way from California to Iowa and like claim that it was a different route, I don't know. It's just.
And
it
I
just
also
doesn't
saw
make
that, like, he bought the motorcycle, like, just a few days before It was like October
Right.
27th or something that he
bought
bought
it?
the
I did not know
motorcycle.
that.
And so it was just like, I don't know, it almost seems like he was like sporadic, like spur of the moment, like was just like really angry
Yeah.
at his brother and was like, you know what, like
I'm just gonna
decided
do
what he was
whatever.
gonna do. Right.
But also, like, I wish that we got to know the evidence that got excluded from the original trial. Because, like, if Jerry believes that it was enough to, like, save him from
Yeah.
going to
Well, there
jail,
was like what I read was like there was eyewitnesses that he said saw him, but it was like also if they were like valid cases, like I feel like they would have submitted that because
Right,
like the court system just wants justice for the people who were murdered. Like they don't have like a grudge against Jerry in general. You know,
Right,
it's
they
not
don't
like
know him.
yeah.
It's like they just
so like
want
you know
what's
you want to
right.
believe
Yeah.
that like the court system did what was right, and like if it was valid evidence, then they would have submitted it.
And, like, remember in AP Psych, that one lesson that was, like, proving eyewitnesses, like,
Yeah.
as, like, not reliable evidence? Because,
Yeah.
like, your memory has the ability to change itself.
Yeah, and
Which
like
is so crazy. Like,
and I even read one, like, they showed that, like, eyewitnesses the wrong, like, they showed him his brother, and so they were like, no, I didn't see him. But then they, like, came back and showed them the right picture, and they're like, oh, yeah, I did. Like, it just, and so it's just, like, a
It's
bunch
so
of
interesting.
coincidences.
Yeah.
And, like,
Yeah.
Jerry reads that as, like, that could prove my innocence. Like, they didn't even know. And it was like, I don't know.
Yeah,
It's just,
yeah.
like, messed up.
It's
but
a very just confusing case.
Yeah.
When you look at everything.
Well, the other thing that I saw was I read an article that said the cigarettes were tested and the DNA did not match to his DNA. But then there's another article that said that the blood type was the match. So it just doesn't make any sense.
I
So
feel like
don't know
there's
what is-
and I feel like it's also hard because it happened like so long ago. So there's like a bunch of new evidence coming in. There's a bunch of like old evidence that's still being like relayed. So it's just like hard to know what's actually accurate.
right.
and obviously, like, any of the cigarettes, like, could that have been, like, a family member that he ended up killing?
Right.
Like, how
Exactly.
did you know?
Like
Yeah.
Never
yeah.
know.
Because you can't ask them.
And they didn't have like
obviously.
the same technology that we have to like DNA test things. So like the best thing they could think of to do was, and I think a lot of what I read was like a lot of the cigarettes were smoked down so low that it was like hard to get any type of DNA, and like the only thing they could get was like blood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like it makes sense.
It's just also like how it said like the crime scene was so messy. It's just like how do you know like that this
Right.
isn't from something else?
Yeah, like they just didn't have the same kind of protocols. So
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
it's just hard to know.
It's really hard for me to believe that, like, you have the ability to kill your own family members. Like,
Yeah.
especially the baby shooting that.
Yeah,
it's
like
so
shooting
sad.
the little like
It's just
1-year-old and like the little
unimaginable.
girl, like
While they're sleeping, like, oh my goodness.
and
The whole
I
family.
I just cannot
Yeah.
imagine like the amount of hatred you'd have to have in your heart to do that. Like I don't even know.
Like over a house.
Yeah.
Over a piece of
Right,
property.
especially when you're in a completely different state.
and like I
Yeah.
feel like and I know like Leslie was like younger, and I feel like that could have been part of the reason why I was so upset that like his family didn't give him the farm because he
Right.
was like the oldest child, and
Right.
usually like things go to the oldest. But it's just like that's never grounds to
Yeah.
like murder,
Yeah.
so like it's not
Exactly. It
justifiable
also
in
just
any way.
doesn't make sense. Like, why do you need the land? You live in California.
Right.
Like, you moved.
Yeah.
Like, what are you gonna do with that? Like, why
Right.
not give it to your brother who
has, like, a
his whole
family.
family
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
and is using it?
I wonder if there's anything like on Jerry that like he had some mental issues like growing
Yeah.
up or like
Oh,
at
yeah.
all.
Like that would be
That'd
really
be
interesting.
interesting. I
And
never
like
read
yeah, and
anything
I
about
didn't see
that.
anything about like his childhood in general.
Yeah, because I feel like people don't just like randomly like switch.
Well, yeah,
right.
like
Flip a
in like
switch, yeah.
criminology and sociology, like
Uh-huh.
you just learn that like a lot of like the influence for people committing like criminal acts is like because of their family.
Yeah.
And so like it would be interesting to try to find some information about his family, which I know might be
Yeah.
harder because like if
It's a
this
long
happened
time
in the
ago. Yeah.
75, like they would have had to been born in like the 50s,
Yeah.
which is just harder to find.
And they probably
evidence
didn't think about that a lot. Like
Oh
Back
yeah,
then, they
right.
probably were just more focused on like
the hard evidence.
yeah, what they had.
For sure. And I feel like one of the pieces of evidence that like really like solidified me feeling like he did it is like that the murderer knew the grounds.
Yes,
Yeah.
for
Yes.
sure.
Because
Yeah.
like it was talking like I read like Leslie would like sleep in the camper because to like watch the crops during like different types of seasons, and so like the fact that there were footprints like leading directly to the camper and then to the house kind
Yeah.
of just like shows that like if it was just some random person, like they
You
wouldn't
wouldn't
know
know
to
to
look
check.
at like who would
Yeah.
check
Yeah.
a camper in a
You have to know
yard
the
like they would
routine.
think.
Yeah,
And like
right.
And it's like-
cutting the box to the neighbors, and then
The wrong one, yeah.
Well, and then that would make sense why he would go to the basement to cut the power there because
right.
it didn't work.
Yeah.
And he was like, he probably just thought like, oh, the like wires must have been faulty
Yeah.
anyways.
Well, and like it's crazy,
Like-
like just to think that this case connects so much to Cedar Falls, because what
Yeah.
happened in Cedar Falls. Like I was talking to Perry about this project,
Mm-hmm.
and she said that her dad remembers like the power going out,
Yeah.
like on that night or something.
Like, that's just
Crazy.
insane.
Really?
Yeah.
And
That's
it's
kinda
just like
creepy.
you
Yeah.
hear like
right?
you hear like single murders that happen like especially like over in Waterloo and stuff like that, but it's like for like a whole family to be murdered in like one night and like see
In their own home where you're supposed to
Yeah,
be safe.
yeah.
Like,
Right.
what the heck?
And it's like also the house is so far out.
That's
like
the other
it can't
thing.
be just like why would a random person go all the way out on Union
Yeah.
Yeah.
to that house specifically?
Right.
That's
Well,
the other
like-
thing. I don't know if you guys have like been past the house
Yeah.
before or seen it, but it's literally like past Beaver, which is the
Yeah,
country
it's
club
so far.
in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Like you wouldn't randomly just be walking and be like, "Oh, let me go up this house."
Yeah.
But there's
And then-
even like
I mean, and I guess like if a murderer like really wanted to like kill some like people, which is just horrible, but
It is in the
if they
middle
really
of
wanted
nowhere.
to, like it is in the middle of nowhere, and like they
Gunshots
could have done all
probably-
this research,
Yeah.
but like the fact that like Jerry knew all of this information, they all like the amount of
Yeah.
times he lied,
Yeah.
like it's just like it would make more sense that he did it than some person who like
Who
killed
else-
4 people
yeah.
and never
who
killed
else
again.
can be a
like,
suspect? Like,
right.
that's the thing.
I don't know.
Right.
Yeah, I guess I didn't look into other suspects in the case, but I feel like the case against Jerry is so strong and like
Yeah.
so.
The only other thing I can say that if it wasn't Jerry, it was probably like a stalker of a
Yeah.
family.
Yeah.
Which is
It was
Because if
something-
they
which
know
is
the
scary.
family so
Someone who
well-
was like mentally like not not mentally together.
Yeah.
And one like bad look towards this person and be like, "Oh,
Yeah.
I'm gonna stalk you," and like
Yeah.
kill your
Oh,
family.
I don't know.
That's
Like that's
I've
horrible to
heard
think about.
many cases about that,
Right.
like where
Yeah.
stalkers
Yeah.
just are crazy and they
Yeah.
just think if you look at them, oh,
that's just like insane to think that you could set up a person doing like the smallest.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's crazy. But also, like, the part about the family dog, I only saw that in one article, but, like, and I don't know, like, what kind of dog it was, but, like,
Must have been so confused.
yeah,
Yeah.
oh my
That's
god,
so
this
sad.
whole
That must
family
be like
died.
terrifying for like
That's
the
horrible.
animal.
But, like,
Like,
for
imagine
them to
listening
not
to
even,
it.
for them to
Yeah.
not even, like, bark at the person that was,
Yeah,
like,
they
coming in
have-
the
that's
house.
That's another thing.
And, like,
The
I mean,
dog
it
has
could
to
just be the
familiar
dog that
with
was
the
just, like,
person.
Well, but
I
even
feel
like
like-
gunshots, like
and the
that would
fact
have
that
to,
like
like
they
stir
knew where the
dog,
spare
right?
key was because
No.
I did read that like the doors were locked, but like they knew where the spare key was to get in the house, and it's like
well, under the mat is very common too. I feel
I
like
think
back
but I
then.
read it was
yeah.
like on like a nail or
Oh,
something.
okay.
So I don't know. I mean, it was probably like not super hidden
It's just, like,
anyways,
how do
but like
investigators know this? Like,
yeah, I don't even
I
know.
don't know.
Yeah.
It's like super interesting.
Well,
like,
the
to
other
be a
thing
detective.
that can kind of like so he killed the 2 parents 1st. I wonder if like the kids heard the gunshots and woke
And
up.
woke up. That's
See,
yeah.
that-
Because like I mean, the 1-year-old was probably in a crib, couldn't get out, but like the 5-year-old,
5-year-old.
that's
I just like can't even imagine like because she probably doesn't even know what gunshots are.
yeah,
like
but it's definitely a loud. Ah,
I'm like on edge right now. I know, me too. Like, but like to hear like such a loud bang, she probably was like about to get out of bed and like ask her mom and dad like what's going on.
Because it's very loud when a gun goes off.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially
back then,
two. How
you don't
many-
have, like,
And
if
I'm
they were
sure,
shot,
they
like,
were
and I'm
shot,
sure like if there
it
was
was
a
like 9 times.
noise that
That's
loud.
a loud. That's
yeah,
loud.
that's a
if there was a
lot.
noise that loud, like I feel like the what is going on outside the door we're filming on?
to our listeners, we are sorry for the disruption.
Yeah, there are people outside of the door. But yeah, like to hear that, like I feel like the baby would have started crying. Like it would have just
Yeah.
been absolutely terrifying. And like where he shot them is just like
It's
like
very
one was like in the
scary.
eye and in the heart and
Yeah.
like the overkill, like 4 times, 5 times,
That's
2
too
times, 2
much.
times.
Yeah,
Like
that's like out of anger.
you only unless I mean like I don't know what reason you would need to shoot somebody that many times.
No.
Right.
I don't know why you would need to
It's
shoot somebody
definitely-
anyways,
yeah.
but like
But like he only how many times did you shoot? He
shot the kids
5-year-old?
2 times.
2
times,
times.
yeah.
Or both the kids
I feel like
shot
he
first.
did
Yeah.
that. I feel like he did the kids like fast just to kill, and it wasn't like in a sadistic way.
Right.
Yeah.
which
So
is good.
I think he was
like, I
mainly-
mean, not
Not that any of it is
No,
good, but
I think mainly did the kids just so that they wouldn't have to suffer for not having parents.
yeah.
And I think the
Probably.
parents was in like in
Malicious,
resentful,
yeah,
malicious
yeah,
way.
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I feel like he did it.
I think he did it.
Just like
Well,
the amount of
it
like
is crazy
times he
'cause, like,
lied and just
Dorothy
everything.
Mark was Leslie and Jerry's mother, and she was the one who found the dead bodies, and
Yeah.
she like did not believe that like her
Yeah.
son would be capable
Yeah.
of it. Like even at the end of one of the articles I read, it was like she didn't think that he'd be able to, just because of all of, like, the law knowledge that he had. Like, he knows the consequences. He knows, like, the stuff. So, like,
that's what's crazy. Just, like, all the things he said is, like, if you were a lawyer, like, and you didn't do it, why would you say any of these things? Because you know it could convict you.
Yeah, you know.
To be, like, a major
you know how everything works.
Like, it just doesn't make sense. So, I feel
I
like
think he's guilty.
Yeah, that's definitely my opinion, too.
I think he's guilty. So, yep.
Thanks for listening, guys. We'll be back next week for another
Bye.
This episode of our podcast is sponsored by Hawkeye Community College Fundamentals of Oral Comm. This class perfectly blends the in-person and online experience, increasing your communication ability. Thank you for your sponsorship.